Welcome, welcome. Okay, so fit versus healthy. We wanted to talk about that today, about the difference between being fit versus being healthy. Because there is a big difference. And what kind of got me started on this, honestly, was actually I was looking at, and I can't remember why, but I was looking at the average age that different athletes lived, like how long they lived based on their sport and which athletes lived the longest, because I thought that was fascinating. And professional athletes, so they're obviously extreme no matter what your sport is. They're doing things to an extreme level. So there's some level of that that's probably not that terribly healthy for your body, just because you're pushing it so hard. And we see that in professional athletics all the time of people dropping out and stuff like that. But so wanted to see, like, what are the effects of that extreme sport on people. So looked up several different sports. So boxers apparently live the shortest, but I couldn't see any like hard data on what that was. Makes sense. A lot of head trauma. Their football players live to be 59 years old on average, or average life expectancy. I mean, that's crazy young to me.
Yeah. Well, what is that? Because 78?
77, I think, is the U.S. right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So 72 is the world average lifespan.
Yeah.
The highest countries are like 82 to 84 are the highest countries.
So still, but I mean, that's like almost 20 years difference in lifespan.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's crazy. Baseball was like 66 or something like that?
67.
Yeah.
So baseball players, because they're taking steroids, it's a more sedentary sport. You can be overweight and play because it's skill based versus total athleticism based. Basketball players actually had a slight bump in their longevity to closer toward the world, or not world average, the higher end of the world. So basketball tends to do a little bit better. I would say though we only have data on basketball players of yesteryear, not when they started the Wilt Chamberlain era of getting guys that were massive.
Yeah.
Right? So once Wilt Chamberlain came on and scored 100 points, then basketball became all about how tall you were. And so now...
I didn't know that.
Well, and basketball players predominantly in the past were white.
Yeah.
And so now it's a much higher, African American population playing basketball. And so it'll be interesting to see where those life expectancy numbers turn now that the average athlete is much larger than the athlete of yesteryear, as well as different ethnicity that has higher rates of things like type 2 diabetes and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes. But right now, I think tennis, they said, though, after a long weekend of watching tennis, Shannon and I went to Indian Wells and watched the tennis tournament. Tennis players are incredibly fit. It's fun to watch a bunch of attractive people go run around the court for a while.
Like soccer too?
Yeah, soccer, So soccer had a bump, actually, in life expectancy as well. But yeah, tennis players, apparently that's the best. And the reason why that they cited, anyway, is that you can continue to play longer into life than most other sports.
I was going to say that people who play tennis are rich.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably part of it. Honestly, that they tend to be of a higher socioeconomic status, and so their health literacy, all those things are most likely higher. But tennis also, you can play it long into life, and you can play doubles. I mean, people are still playing doubles in their 80s and 90s. So what I like about tennis from a longevity standpoint, what it can help older adults be able to do is maintain power.
Yeah, that's
You're still, swinging hard to hit, so you're using upper body power with the racket, and then you're running and cutting and moving and jumping even. Having to backpedal, step backwards, which is really hard for older adults, things like that. So that ability to move around the court, if you can do that, you're probably not very likely to fall, walking up the stairs or other things like that. And if you do take a fall, because sometimes you do, trip and stumble into
Right, well, I mean, it's a matter, for all of us, it's a matter of when versus if, right?
Yeah, that we do stumble and we do occasionally fall. And so you're more likely to have higher bone density, all those things from that type of activity, because it does include cutting, jumping, and running. And so, yeah.
Well, I mean, it really has those 4 components that we talk about: mobility, stability, strength, and power. Like,
right.
That's a sport you've got to have all of them, right? To be able to hit the swing, to be able to move across the court. And so, like, in looking at someone who's overall healthy, they're going to have those factors, in addition to just, like, other metabolic health factors. But I think for a contrast, I think of one of my good friends. Like, he is just crazy ripped.
Well, he's a power lifter more, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, well, he's more like what's bodybuilder physique, right?
Physique.
So, like,
that's the word. I never remember.
So anyway, and he does physique competitions.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Like, big dude, good looking guy, and I remember I was at this retreat with him, and a bunch of us were doing a hike. It's up near Wanship, the place, and when you get to the top of the hike, it just opens up. You can see this whole bowl, and it's just beautiful, like mountains and the valley, and it was amazing. But he had to stop it about halfway through because, like, cardiovascularly, he couldn't keep up, right? Like, it was just too exhausting for him. And so here's a very fit individual, right? Like, you look at this and be like, oh my gosh, like, this guy's a freaking athlete. Like, this is crazy.
Right.
When yes, in his specific domain of bodybuilding, he does well and he looks the part. But from an overall health perspective, it's just not there.
Yeah. Well, so that I went and did FitCon. I went to FitCon. And so here's all these people that are super fit, right? And we did metabolic testing at this FitCon event. And so I did 50-something tests, I believe, or 40-something tests in 2 days. It was a nightmare. It was bonkers. But he did all these metabolic tests on all these fit people. Fascinating. I had very, very few fit people cardiovascularly at FitCon. So most people scored in the mid-ranges or lower. Most of the people there, even though they had six-pack abs and biceps, were not fit. And it's fascinating to see that you can be, that trim or fit, but not cardiovascularly healthy. And that's a problem. So overall health is more important in many ways if you want to be able to continue to enjoy your life and enjoy the things that you do in life and have that longevity. And I'm less concerned personally, I guess, about years to my life and more about life to my years. That while I'm here, I might as well be able to enjoy everything that I want to do. And I do enjoy those things, right? I do enjoy being active and stuff like that. Happy birthday? Whose birthday is it? I think maybe Shannon sent that on the wrong thread. Hey, Marty. Marty joined us. So anyway. Oh, today is my birthday. Oh, I didn't read that from Christy. Oh, there we go. Oh, hey, Christy, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Oh, that's awesome. I did not see that.
Sorry. Cool, Shannon.
Cool, Shannon. What? Oh, awesome. Happy birthday, Christy.
I love it. On a bright, sunny day, too.
Yeah, it is a beautiful day.
Way to have today be your birthday.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, so speaking of birthdays and life to your years, right? So that to me, that's the most important part, is that you can stay healthy and you can stay fit and be able to enjoy life. When I see people, so at this tennis tournament that we were at all weekend, it was so fun to see so many fit older adults who have loved tennis their whole life walking around the tennis gardens and stuff like that.
That's really cool.
And you see some that are walking up and down the bleachers and, doing all those things. And you saw some that were obviously really old and kind of a few that were a little out of it and whatever. But we sat next to in the airport a couple of different times, saw like a grandmother, mother, and daughter all going to watch tennis together and stuff like that. And that's just, that's so fun to be able to like share that. And they had their tennis rackets in their bags, and it's cool to be able to have a sport or an activity that you can do. So I'm on this tennis high right now. I should sign up for a tournament right now while I'm still like all juiced up from it. But that idea of doing the things that keep you fit, keep you active, keep you healthy so that you can enjoy life now as well as later down the road, that's so important. And so being fit, as far as our image is really not as important as being fit as far as all of those other metrics of being cardiovascularly fit and being able to do the things that we love to do. That's the point that I saw, or what I learned from FitCon, is I've got to let go personally, but also help my patients to be able to do that, of like six-pack abs being the thing, and more about creating the habits that lead toward being able to do the things that I love to do for the rest of my life. And I think that's if you can find activities you love to do. So for Christy, it's horseback riding. For Shannon, it's tennis and running and, hiking and climbing and all kinds of adventures. For Marty, you love to do the triathlons and stuff like that. Each of you have things that you love to do that keep you moving and keep you active. And that's the key. Those activities that you love to do, if you can focus your workouts then on building yourself up for those activities, then working out is no longer a chore. It's part of like being able to do the things you love to do instead. And it makes being consistent with it so you can do it for the rest of your life way more fun.
Yeah.
And way more like doable and sustainable and less drudgery and like, I have to. Because it's not about keeping a certain dress size or whatever. It's more about being able to be you. Yeah, and it becomes eventually a habit. And it becomes like, in some ways it becomes like eating dinner. Like if you go to bed without working out, it's like, oh man, I didn't eat dinner tonight. I didn't work out today. It becomes that same kind of a thing where it just becomes part of who you are and what you do. And that takes time to build those habits. And unfortunately, it's really easy to get out of those habits. Yeah. And so it's all about getting back on that horse and continuing to do the little things.
Yeah. Well, and that consistency is such a huge part of it. Last week we talked about like by 2035, half plus of the world's population is supposed to be obese.
I think that's what got me started on this concept. Anyway,
yeah.
Well, looking up the athletes, how long they live and what athletes live the longest and stuff. Anyway,
yeah.
Sorry.
And obviously, like we talked about that, there's a whole host of societal factors that lead into that. But definitely, like the consistency and the way that we are taught to think about fitness and to view fitness is very different. Like at the same time as we have this like research suggesting a trend towards greater obesity, like fitness is more accessible than ever, right? You see all of these different things popping up, all these different forms, which is cool in many ways. But the problem is that many of those businesses are not designed around health. They're designed around making a profit, because at the end of the day, like that's what businesses need to do. They need to turn a profit. And so what gets people in the doors is intense exercise and that social aspect of exercise. And again, like the intensity by itself is not bad. The social aspect is not bad, but it's what they lead to. And typically it leads to a really intense, maybe obsession even with the mode of exercise for a while. And then people get burned out, right? It's not sustainable. It's not something that you can do consistently day after day after day. You're like, oh my gosh, why am I always so tired? It's taking forever to recover. Right? All my muscles are sore. And some of that's normal with beginning any type of exercise program. But when like you're just repeatedly run down and you just don't have enough time to recover session to session, then what happens? People drop it. or they think that the problem is with them. Like, I guess I just can't get healthy, right? Like, it's not in the cards for me. When really it's about finding something that's enjoyable and sustainable for years and years.
Yeah.
The thing that we talk about a lot is like, imagine doing this thing when you're 85. Can you imagine like holding this routine? Can you imagine doing these types of things? Or are you like, no way, like this isn't happening.
Yeah.
And so that can be just a good general guide for, is this an activity that's going to lead to me living a healthy lifestyle for a long period of time? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing is that versus focusing on sustainability and consistency, we focus on what's exciting, what's new, and what's intense, because we associate hard with good.
Yeah.
And that
Right.
can be the case, but really, as we've talked about so many times, what seems to be the case and what bears out in the research is that kind of 80-20 split, right? Doing some of that intensity, being able to maintain the power movements, the speed, the coordination, the skill of whatever activity that we're doing, but then a lot of that just building up that base, building up endurance, building up tolerance to the thing, so that we can continue to do it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But I think too often we just invert that pyramid.
Right.
And-
And we try to work too hard, and then it's not sustainable, and then it breaks the habits.
Yeah.
Because we can't keep that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
And I think another thing to look at, going back to the athletes, is, we talked about lifestyle, and I think too often we don't, we just see the tip of the iceberg of what people look like, right? Oh man, like that person is super
Yeah.
ripped and they look so good. Like, well, what does that actually look like?
Or what does that take?
What does that
Yeah.
take, right?
Yeah.
And so often it takes pretty extreme behaviors. And when you look at the overall like health profile and psychological profile, like not a super healthy outlook there.
Well, you talk to any of the superheroes, right, in the movies, and what it takes to get those bodies, and they hate it.
Yeah.
They hate it. They talk about how awful it is to eat more just chicken. Just boiled chicken is what most of them wind up eating with, some seasonings or sauces or whatever.
Gross.
But they just have to put down thousands and thousands of calories of chicken and broccoli and, just like lame foods, not very nutritious necessarily, but just tons and tons of protein to be able to make it available to build those muscles and stuff. And it's not a sustainable thing. It's not very healthy. And it turns out that even though they're lean, they're not necessarily healthy. And so that's another thing. So we've been doing some research because of this with athletes and whatnot. Been doing some research about BMI. So I actually have always been a proponent of BMI, even though people always give BMI a hard time, that your BMI is maybe inaccurate in terms of measuring fatness, which I will agree 100%. It is not a good measure of what they call adiposity, so how much adipose tissue you have. It is a great measure, though, of longevity and of other health risks. And so even though you have a higher muscle mass and a low body fat percentage, if that muscle mass is too high, then you still are at greater risk because of a higher BMI. And so it's actually a pretty good predictor of other health risks, cancers, cardiovascular disease, and other, like, it's hard on your organs to have that bigger body. And so that type of a mentality of moderation or just building a healthy body versus having to measure up to some standard of fitness, I think is definitely more the emphasis there.
Yeah.
So love the ads that have the athletic bodies. Let's get real about getting into shape. Yeah. So I agree. Like, let's get real about it instead of only showing the incredibly fit people. Like, show real people doing, like, really getting in shape and what that means and what that looks like and things like that. We don't have to be super skinny to be healthy. In fact, so that's in doing this research about the BMI and things like that, what they found is that there's actually a J-shaped curve with longevity and the BMI. So a J-shaped curve meaning Let's grab the whiteboard
Nike
actually
swoosh.
really quick. So it looks like a Nike swoosh. So this is what it looks like this. And so this is kind of the cutoff here for 25 BMI. This is like 30 or something like that. And this is 18.5. And so actually your risk starts to climb as you get thinner. And then your risk starts to climb once you get above 25. And in here is kind of the healthiest. And this happens to be at 20 to 21. Are the healthiest, least likely to die because of weight-related factors. I guess weight-related factors for your size is 20 to 21. And people above that then start to have more and more deaths related to and health complications related to that. And then same thing here. And so this climbs pretty rapidly this way as well. In fact, in most conditions or most things, it's actually a little bit steeper on this side than it's steep on this side. Meaning like you're more likely to die the thinner you get. And so thinness isn't necessarily desirable either. Thanks, Vanna.
Anytime. Pat
Yeah.
Sajak.
Yeah.
Do you love that I knew his name?
Pat Sajak. So yeah, that thinness isn't necessarily desirable either. There's a happy medium of being fit and healthy, but having enough muscle density to be healthy, not just skinny.
Well, I mean, and this is one of the things that we see be a big problem in college athletics, especially among women.
Yeah.
Is the low BMI, which you have all sorts of problems with that. You start to get a higher increase in bone stress injuries, fatigue-related issues, and it's just on that lower end, right? You may look really good, and this is part of the problem too. Is so many of those girls get praised for looking that way.
Right.
Oh, you look so good that way. Or, oh,
Right.
did you lose? Right. We reinforce some of these unhealthy behaviors with social cues.
Right. We got to change what looks good in our minds, right?
And as a result, they end up with injury. And we've talked to some people that, like, college runners, they, like, decades they left it behind because it just took such a toll on their body.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we have enough, that we're onboarding enough proper nutrition, right? Getting enough of those macronutrients, right? Our carbs, our fats, our proteins. But then, like, eating enough fruits and vegetables and variety of foods, nuts, seeds, legumes, things like that, that we're getting all those other nutrients that our body needs, so that it can keep making, that it can keep us healthy.
Right.
That's one of the things that people run into really commonly on that, like, you know, the beach body way is that they resort to unhealthy behaviors. Even if it's for a short term, it still takes a toll on your body and certainly on your mental health.
Totally, yeah.
But it often veers into the realm of unhealthy. Like so for men, what they call essential body fat is 2 to 5%. Women is 10 to 13%. And a lot of times, people that are like that super six-pack abs are kind of redlining that area. And if they stay in that red line, like, bad things start to happen. It's a temporary thing. Even the superhero movies, for those, you know, they film those scenes, and then once that movie's done, like, they go back to having more of a normal physique until the next time.
Right. Well, even like they'll talk about it, like what they have to do when they know they're filming shirt off scenes versus what they are for the rest of the movie is totally different.
When are you dehydrating yourself?
Right, because it's not sustainable to look like that. People don't look like that on a day-to-day basis. And same thing, like the Instagram models and stuff like that, it's not healthy. It's not okay to look Instagram ready all the time. And if you are, your health is most likely in jeopardy. And so, just things to think about, that there's a difference between fit and healthy. And even elite athletes can have it affect their health, even though they're so fit. It can decrease your longevity. And so you got to be careful there that you're not doing things with your fitness or with your image of what you want your body to look like, that is actually negatively impacting your health and shortening your lifespan and making it harder to be sustained. And so you may look great for a short period of time in your life, and then it all falls apart, and then your mental health falls apart because of you're not who you thought you were or think you should be or things like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I had a conversation with my mom the other day, and for years my parents have tried all sorts of different diets, and we've talked about that some on here before. And I was just talking about so the conversation happened because my parents had some leftover stuff from a program that my dad had been doing. There were these little cinnamon bites. They were so gross. They're so gross. I was like, Mom, these taste like this is like cinnamon flavored dog treats or something like that, right? It's just so dry. And I was just razzing her about them, and she's like, I know, but like with this program, they only had you eat this way for 6 months. And I was like, I would just want to die if I had to eat this way for 6 months.
Right.
But what she was saying like revealed the problem with the way that we look at fitness sometimes, right? Oh, well, like I'll do this essentially unhealthy thing, but it's just for the short term.
Right.
Well, what that teaches us is that it's okay to engage in really very unhealthy behaviors for a short-term goal, versus connecting our behaviors to long-term health. Right. And so it's been hard for her to see that in all these diets, which really have approached the way of it hasn't gone after the lifestyle aspects. It's gone for, oh, you want to lose weight really fast? Well, do this, right? Well, don't eat fruit for 6 months. Well, don't do this for 6 months. Well, don't, right? It's all these more restrictive behaviors versus addressing what's preventing the issue or what's creating the issue in the first place and going after some of those things while creating a healthy relationship with food, or whatever the thing is, right? Creating a healthy relationship with weight or with self-image, and letting some of those things, right, weight loss or the six-packs, abs, or whatever, being a byproduct of living those healthy lifestyles, right? Of making those healthy choices over years and years and years, right? I want to be able to go hiking. I want to be able to go horseback riding. I want to be able to do triathlons. I want to be able to play tennis. Well, then what are the things that I need to do to keep me in that shape?
Yeah.
And then just like feeling good is a natural outgrowth of living that healthy lifestyle. And often the looking good, although that's not what we want to focus on here, often follows as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be the natural result of that.
Yeah,
right?
and I think looking good, honestly, has a lot to do with self-image versus what objective physical characteristics you have.
Right.
Right.
It has more to do with confidence. And climbing that mountain or riding that horse or whatever builds your confidence more than losing that 1 inch in the mirror and not really seeing it, or, having some chips that make us retain water and now that 1 inch is back, even if it's just for a few hours. Like that.
Some salt and vinegar chips. I love those things. Kettle cooked.
But that's just so fleeting. Whereas like the accomplishments of being able to do the things you love to do and enjoy those are more lasting and build our confidence in our ability to be who we want to be. And the confidence is really like what makes us happy in our body or comfortable in our skin. It's more about confidence than it is what we actually look like. And so if we focus on that, building our confidence by doing all those good things, that's where we're going to get there in the long run. So, yeah, thanks so much for joining us. We love talking about this stuff. Amen to that. Yeah. And that really is what it should be about, is how confident we feel about ourselves and build that confidence through what we can do and instead of like what we look like in the mirror or what dress size we fit into or whatever else, easier said than done for sure. And there's a lot of layers to that, but
For sure.
But the key is just start where you're at and start building on that. Yep. And so there you go. We'll keep talking about that topic every single call. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next call Monday morning, bright and early, and I'll actually be in town to join. So
whoa, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
Christmas miracle.
Seriously. All right, we'll see you then.